Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Good evening to you. Good evening and welcome to Darren Dialogues. I'm your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I hope that you all are having a great and wonderful day. Tonight is Monday Motivation and lots of good things going on in the world. First of all, I want to say welcome to November, my absolute favorite month of the year, the month for sweet potato pies and macaroni and cheese and collard greens and dressing and turkey and all of those wonderful things we like to eat. The month for hot chocolate and coffee and herbal tea. The month for everything nice. And of course, it's also my birthday month. And most of you know who know me by now, I celebrate all month. So, if you would like to gift me something this month, you can cash at me at Life Nation. You can Venmo me at Shantae Charles. And just put a little note for your birthday in there so I know where it goes. Or you can do what I ask all people to do anyway, which is to support the arts. I have a website, robertandshantaeglobal.com. I have a t-shirt and accessories business as well at God Ideas Teespring, and those links are available on any of my platforms where you can find me. There's plenty of examples of what's on the site. So if you want to support, you can. I also have some posters and artwork up there as well. So if you've been wanting to get some of my art, I actually have some in poster form on the Teespring site. So any way you choose to support or any way you choose to be a blessing on this month as I celebrate, I'm going into double digits. So I will be 44. That's right. 44 this year. 44. Not 24, not 34, not 19. Because some people have mistaken me for being 19 and therefore they sometimes talk to me like I'm 19 and I'm not 19. But I'll be 44. And so I'm thankful for every single year that I am given. I also want to thank our supporters, those of you who are consistent givers and consistent listeners. If you'd like to join our community of regular supporters, you can join at patreon.com/daring dialogues, all one word. So, tonight we're going to jump back into I Never Had It Made by Jackie Robinson, my relative, my one of my ancestors who has really been giving me some encouragement during this time. In case some of us don't know, this has been a really interesting time for entrepreneurs. Many of us are having to make some adjustments in our business. We're having to add tools that we didn't have before. And so it's been a learning curve for a lot of entrepreneurs, preparing ourselves for the future. So if you know any entrepreneurs out there, check in on them and say, "Hey, are you okay? How are you doing? I know the economy is doing its thing, but how are you doing?" So check in on the entrepreneurs in your life. Again, we're going into Jackie Robinson's reading tonight, which is called The Price of Popularity. And we are continuing learning about the things that Jackie went through, and hopefully we'll find some encouragement on tonight. The chapter is The Price of Popularity. The news that Branch Rickey would be leaving the Dodgers at the end of the 1950 season to take over the Pittsburgh Pirates hit me hard. Walter O'Malley, an officer of the corporation, had the first option to buy Mr. Rickey's stock. As soon as O'Malley took over the presidency of the club, he made it clear that he was anti-Rickey. At the time, I didn't know whether O'Malley was jealous of the man or down on him because he had brought integration into the game. All I knew in 1950 was that he seemed to become furious whenever he heard the name Rickey. He knew that I felt very deeply about Mr. Rickey, and consequently, I became the target of his insecurity. I didn't act like some sorehead who had lost his protector. I didn't need a protector at this point. O'Malley's attitude toward me was viciously antagonistic. I learned that he had a habit of calling me Mr. Rickey's prima donna and giving Mr. Rickey a hard time about what kind of season I would have. I also learned that O'Malley and some of the other Dodgers stockholders had squeezed Rickey out at the end of 1950. They wouldn't sign a new contract for him, and they arranged it so he would have to sell his stock. My troubles with the Dodger front office in the early 50s, particularly 1951 and 1952, combined with my spirited response on the playing field whenever I felt that either my team or I was being shoved around, inflamed the relationship between me and some members of the press. There were more than a few sports writers who were willing to sacrifice principle for a scoop. During the 1951 season, for instance, we were losing a vital game with the Braves, and all of us were feeling low. Our outlook didn't improve when umpire Frank Descoli called what he saw as a bum decision against the team. Toward the end of the game, with the score tied, we needed to keep them from scoring and going into extra innings. The ball was grounded to me. I threw it to Roy at home. It seemed to us that Roy had the plate blocked and the runner was out. Nevertheless, Descoli called him safe. Roy jumped up to protest, and Descoli immediately threw him out of the game. Our whole team was furious. We let the umpires know it as we walked back toward the clubhouse. Preacher Rose stopped at the umpire's dressing room door and kicked it so hard that he knocked a hole in it. Imagine my astonishment when that evening I saw a newspaper with a big page one headline saying that Jackie Robinson had blown his top and kicked in the door. I called the paper and spoke to the man who had bylined the story. I told him I could prove the story was a lie and demanded to know how he got his phony information. He hemmed and hawed and finally told me that a private policeman had told him and he didn't have time to verify it with me because he had to make his deadline. I was pretty angry at his lame excuse. The following day, the writer ran a tiny story retracting the lie the paper had used to create such a big sensation. Retractions never catch up with headlines. The sports writer, who seemed to be doing his best to make me revert to the old cheek-turning, humble Robinson, was Dick Young of the New York Daily News. Dick and I have had for a number of years a strange relationship. I used to think he was a nice guy personally, and I knew he was a good sports writer. As time went by, Young became, in my book, a racial bigot. My trouble with Dick began right after 1949 when he first warned me that I should refrain from sounding off because I was offending sports writers like himself. He pointed out that there were a lot of awards and advantages I might miss out on if I antagonized sports writers since they have a great deal of power. In his way, I believed that Dick was trying to help me at that time. He genuinely did not understand that as much as I liked awards and being popular, these things were not as important to me as my own integrity. When I told Dick this and that I was infinitely more interested in being respected as a man than in being liked, he apparently took it as a personal insult. Although he seemed to stand up for me occasionally in later years, he often seemed to use his column to attack me, and relations between us have often been strained. Milton Gross proved to me several times that he was a writer with perspective and a sense of objectivity. Once I suddenly found myself in a hassle with Buzzy Bavasi, who had become vice president and general manager of the club after Branch Rickey left. Walter O'Malley had signed a deal that would mean playing a certain number of games in Jersey City. Our team didn't like it because, in order to attract just a little more business, we were being subjected to playing in a less than major league condition. A number of players made angry statements about it, and the writers placed the most emphasis on mine. The press made the same old tired comments condemning me again for sounding off. Milt Gross wrote, "Anybody else may say anything and it's disregarded. Jackie opens his mouth and everybody rushes to put their feet into it. The tempest evoked by Robinson last week would have been nothing if any other Dodger had said what Jackie did about Walter O'Malley's Jersey City junket. As a matter of fact, they did. There wasn't a Dodger in the clubhouse who didn't pop off as much or more. But it was Robinson who found himself embroiled in a needling newspaper man exchanging crosswords with Bavasi and being falsely accused by another member of the press of wanting to beat up an interviewer as an aftermath of his expression of an honest opinion. The sorry conclusion must be that honesty in baseball is no longer a virtue, and Jackie's reward will be that he remains a target for the agitators who, unfortunately, include a number of men in my own business. Dick Young was responsible for starting another rhubarb with O'Malley. Young printed a report about some young Dodger players who had allegedly discussed me negatively in a few of the Brooklyn drinking spots. Dick was not even on the scene when these conversations supposedly took place, and somebody apparently brought a story to him which he promptly presented to the public. His article indicated that these players were unhappy with me because I was too aggressive in protesting plays that I acted as though I was running the team. Dick's article gave O'Malley another opportunity to go around criticizing me, but I knew what O'Malley's problem was. To put it bluntly, I was one of those uppity N-words in O'Malley's book. I responded normally when some newspaper reporters asked me what I thought of churches and synagogues being bombed in the South in protest against the Supreme Court ruling on school desegregation. I said that the people who would bomb a church had to be sick and that our federal government ought to use every resource to prosecute them. The writer interviewing me made me feel very sad when he claimed that Roy Campanella had observed that the way to prevent such incidents was for blacks to stop pressing to get too far too fast. Campy was, after all, a father, just as I was. If I had a room jammed with trophies, awards, and citations, and a child of mine came to me in that room and asked what I had done in defense of black people and decent whites fighting for freedom, and I had to tell that child that I kept quiet, that I had been timid, I would have had to mark myself a total failure in the whole business of living. Another incident pointing up differences between Campy and me involved the Chase Hotel in St. Louis. I took a stand and said I was tired of having special Jim Crow living arrangements made for me while white players slept in the air-conditioned Chase hotel rooms. That made the hotel back down, and they announced that from then on I could stay with the team. Roy told me he didn't want to stay at the Chase. He said it was a matter of pride since they hadn't wanted him in the past. I told him that he had no monopoly on pride, that baseball hadn't wanted him in the past, but that he was in it now. I added that winning a victory over the Chase Hotel prejudice meant we were really becoming a team. Members would be all treated equally. Also, now that we had broken the barriers at the Chase, other blacks not in baseball who wanted to stay in a decent hotel would begin to find acceptance. I'll never forget Campy's answer to all of that. "I'm no crusader," he said. That was the kind of attitude a Dick Young and many other whites approved of. During a conversation in which Dick Young and I were trying to define our differences, Dick said, "The trouble between you and me, Jackie, is that I can go to Campy and all we discuss is baseball. I talk to you and sooner or later we get around to social issues. It just happens I'm not interested in social issues." I told him that I was, and added that if I had to stop saying anything to him about race relations or discrimination against black people or injustices in the game, then we'd probably just have to stop any serious discussions. I'm telling you as a friend, Dick insisted, that a lot of newspapermen are saying that Campy's the kind of guy they can like, but that your aggressiveness, your wearing your race on your sleeve, makes enemies. Dick, we might as well just get this straight, I answered. I like friends just as much as other people, but if it comes down to the question of having a choice between the friendship of some of these writers and their respect, I'll take their respect. I know that a lot of them don't like me because I discuss things that get in the way of their guilt complexes, but I'll bet you they respect me. Personally, Jackie, Dick persisted, when I talk to Campy, I almost never think of him as a Negro. Anytime I talk to you, I'm acutely aware of the fact that you're a Negro. I tried patiently to explain that I want to be thought of as what I am, that I am proud of my blackness, proud of the accomplishments of black people. If you tell me that when you think of me, you think of a whining, cringing, handkerchief head standing before you with his hat in his hand, expressing eternal gratitude for the fact that you only had 9 little digs in yesterday's story when you could have had 10, that's one thing, I replied. If you think of me as the kind of Negro who's come to the conclusion that he isn't going to beg for anything, that he will be reasonable, but he darn well is tired of being patient, that's another thing. I want to be thought of as the latter kind of Negro, and if it makes some people uncomfortable, if it makes me the kind of guy they can't like, that's tough. That's the way the ball bounces. I knew that my message didn't get through to Dick. Either that, or it was a message he was not willing to accept. I was sorry he felt he had to compare Campy and myself, but I did feel strengthened in my convictions because of the approval I received from the black press, which had been in my corner from the beginning of my career. A.S. Doc Young, for instance, who is one of the most brilliant black sports writers in the country, sized up the Robinson Campanella situation like this. Background for this feud is found in the differences in personalities between these two stars. Campy is a Dale Carnegie disciple who believes in getting along at all costs and in being exceedingly grateful for any favor or any deed interpreted as a favor. Jackie, on the other hand, is an aggressive individualist who is willing to pay the price and once having paid it in full, does not believe that effusive thank yous are a necessary tip. Campy believes Jackie owes baseball everything. Jackie knows that baseball was ready to put the skids under him without his knowledge after having lived handsomely on him for years. Jackie knows that baseball never has been overly concerned about its unpaid debts to all the great Negro players who lived from 1887 to 1945 without a mere look in on organized ball. I like both players, and I'm sorry this kind of thing must come up. I liked what Doc had to say because I thought he was trying to be fair. He wasn't tackling Roy or calling him an Uncle Tom. He wasn't hitting me as some kind of troublemaker. He was just saying we were two different people with two different points of view. I'm glad to say that I never had a personal quarrel with Campy. I've always respected him and I regard him as a guy worthy of admiration. Our friendship was one thing that many white writers didn't want to see. Joe Reichler of the Associated Press reported a supposed Campanella remark, which he said Roy made early in his career during an altercation with an umpire in which the fierce Jackie Robinson was involved. The supposed remark was, I like it up here, don't spoil it. The implication was that Campanella was happy to be in the major leagues after so many years of struggling in the Negro leagues, and he didn't want anything to jeopardize his chances of remaining there. Whew. What can we learn from my ancestor, Jackie Robinson? And the more I read about him, the more I say, yeah, we can. One of the most important things, or several things that I see here is number one, being yourself, being true to your own convictions, being true to your own beliefs, not being swayed by the desire to be liked, right? We all want people who appreciate us. We all want, generally most human beings want somebody to at least say, yes, you are a kind individual, but we should not forsake the truth of who we are. Neither should we forsake our convictions to gain somebody's approval or stamp of approval. He is very straightforward in his convictions, right? He doesn't mince any words. I think that is a something that we can take away from what he is saying. He's also talking about the fact that people will pitch you against someone else who comes across as more, how can I put it? Who comes across as more amenable to their wishes and their desires. Like Jackie Robinson said, he never really had a problem with Campanella, but people were trying to insert a problem there. And if you are in the spotlight in any way, shape, or form, you have to watch out for people who are trying to pit you against someone else. It happens often in the entertainment industry, especially in the music industry. You know, people will in interviews, you'll see how they'll slip in a question and say, "What do you think about this person?" or "What do you think about this actor?" or "What do you think about this musician?" Because people are looking for a contrived, orchestrated animosity or some kind of contention that they can use as more press. And I think Jackie Robinson is very wise in being aware of what the press was trying to do at the time and making sure that he was not being used as a tool to come against someone else that was a generally good person for him. Like he was like, I don't really have beef with him. That's how he chooses to believe. That's how he chooses to run his life. So he was very good at, staying out of that kind of fray. The other thing he talked about here that I thought was interesting was that this writer would attack him in the headlines, but when they were, having their discussions, he was always trying to paint himself as kind of giving advice in Jackie's best interests. But really what he was doing, he was basically saying, you're not the kind of Negro that I like. And it wasn't really about that. Jackie was trying to be himself. And this sports writer had a problem with the self that Jackie was presenting to the world. So what did he do? He did what people who lack integrity do. He was using his power in the press to paint him in a negative light simply because he was not taking his opinions about how he should shape himself personally. And you may run into somebody like that is saying, well, hey, if you just do it this way, you'll get more followers. If you just do it this way, you'll get more likes. I was laughing to myself today as I was doing my makeup, and I said, if I did a couple of videos about how to put your eyebrows on, because I don't have any. I have a little speck here and there. But if I did a video about how to draw your eyebrows so they don't look like you're going for, a drag queen kind of television show, so your eyebrows are not meeting in the center and they're not super, super thick, right? If I were doing a video about that, or if I were doing a video about how to put on lip gloss, I would probably get 1,000 views. I mean, I could, but that's not what I'm about. That's not my personality. That's not how I want to spend time online. Am I saying there's anything wrong with those interests? Not at all. I'm just simply saying it's not my interest. And I think that's kind of what Jackie Robinson was saying. Listen, there's this type of black person over here that you guys are cool with. And then there's this black person over here that kind of makes you all feel a little uncomfortable. I'm on that end over there. And guess what? I'm not coming off of that end just to please you. Just to please you. And so lots here to kind of dig in. I like the fact that he talked about how, Campanella was basically saying, I'm not a crusader. I'm here. I'm playing. I enjoy the gains that have been made, but I'm not looking to increase those gains that have been made. Meanwhile, Jackie, on the other hand, he was always looking to increase access for other people. And again, every Black person is not the same. You're going to have some Black people that are like, listen, I'm just here for the paycheck. And then you'll have Black people that say, I am here to not just be in this space, but I'm here to break barriers. I'm here to open doors. I'm here to increase access so that more people can come behind me. So you have to decide what kind of Black person you want to be. And doesn't mean that somebody should come and condemn you because that is not the role that you want to play. But also those who are kind of playing that role, those who are looking to create spaces and access for other people, don't come sideways at us either. Okay. So if you want to come on, if you're on IG tonight with us on Daring Dialogues, if you want to come on and chop it up and have some discussion around this, jump right on. On Tuesday on our Black Table Talk, we'll be on Facebook on the Black Table Talk page. We're going to take a pause and we'll be talking about Colin in Black and White. If you have not seen this limited series, it's almost like a docudrama. It's a little bit documentary style, plus storytelling, plus movie acting with some historical pieces tied throughout. I would encourage you to go see it. I think each episode is maybe like 35 minutes, and it's 6 episodes. So you're talking, 3 hours total. But I would encourage you to go see it because we're going to be discussing it on tomorrow on Black Table Talk. Incredible, incredible job by Ava DuVernay and Colin Kaepernick and Jaden Michael, who plays the young Colin in the series. So we're going to jump into some of the topics that Colin Kaepernick brought out. It is not a slow moving series. It goes really, really fast. And he jumps right into all of these different issues, which I won't bring up tonight. I'll save it for tomorrow, but we're going to have a great conversation. So again, if you want to jump on and respond to tonight's reading, feel free to hit the camera and I will bring you on. As we are waiting, I want to thank those of you who are listening by our podcast, anchor.fm/Daring Dialogues. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I hope that listening and hearing Jackie's response to the people in his life has encouraged you to be more authentic in who you are and what you stand for. Continue to be your original self, and Lord willing, we'll see you on tomorrow. Take care and God bless.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good. I was thinking as you was reading that with Jackie Robinson and everything that he said, it came to me, the thought came to me, everything he said, they made a mountain out of a molehill. So no matter what he said, it was blown out of proportion and things that weren't even true. And he was not the one that kicked the hole in the door, but it was put out. And then you put a little snippet in that people probably could barely see to say for correction, it was not him. But the thing I like about this, I never had it made, was Jackie Robinson stayed true to what he believed. And like you had put it, Campanella said he was not a crusade. He was just comfortable with getting in a more comfortable space for him, was that he was able to play and make more money. And he was satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And so even with Jackie Robinson, everything was about, I want to, where I'm at, I'm not satisfied, and I want to see more people. So he's the person you put in place, and he said, I want more to come along. Mm-hmm. And then when the hotel is open up for us to be able, that makes the doors open, and then more, Black people are more welcoming. But when you look at Jackie Robinson with that David Young sports writer, when he always tried to tell him, oh, just, be grateful. Like they say, look how you've gotten to. And if you would just be quiet, everybody would just love you. So Jackie said, no, I'm interested in social, race, relation, and what's going on with people. And I have this space, and I'm going to use it. And so I'm not looking to be popular. I'm not looking to be favored. So, and to me, that reporter was, he wore two faces.
Yeah. And thank you for reminding me, because I was going to touch on that about retractions never get the press that the headline gets.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that's how a lot of press works, right? They either put out a headline that's not true and they have to retract it, or they put out a headline that's misleading. And so a lot of people, you see this all over social media these days. People will be down in the comments saying, did y'all even read the article? Because the headline is misleading. And so, because unfortunately, we have a generation of people that don't really read.
That's true.
Not like we were reading in the past, not saying they don't read at all, but people tend to read a headline and think they know the whole story. And because of that, you can put up a misleading headline to get clicks into a story. And then when people start reading it, they're like, oh, they ain't have nothing to do with that. Like, this isn't even about these people. And people also do it on videos. That's how they get lots of video clicks. They'll put Cardi B or somebody in their video title, and then when you click on it, it has nothing to do with Cardi B.
Nothing.
And so, it's that form of dishonesty that's driving your numbers. And just like you said, we got this story that Jackie kicked in the door. But we gonna put a little tiny retraction in there that most people probably aren't gonna see. But you don't put this big headline about me. Right. Yeah. And my thing is, like, to me, that's also a journalism thing that probably needs to be addressed. Like, if you put up a huge headline that somebody did something and you retract it, your retraction needs to be as big as your headline was. Exactly. So if you put it on the front page, then your retraction should be on the front page. It shouldn't be no little tiny sentence all the way at the end of the newspaper where nobody might not be looking. That's not fair to the person whose name that you impugned. And so, definitely.
But you just, and so all you're doing there is spewing, things. Well, he just talks too much, and so you just writing things, and all. To me, that man there was, like he said, racist, and he was. But his whole thing was, I want you to see how grateful you should be. But since you're not, I'm just gonna put some more fuel to the fire. Where you say stuff, I'm going to balloon it out, and then what it is going to bring more attacks to you. So he know what he was, like that baiting, you used that, and that's not integrity.
Yeah, I mean, he would basically write things that would cause Jackie to be attacked so that he could come back and say, well, if you were a more sweet and docile, mild Negro,
like Campanella,
you wouldn't be experiencing these things.
So this is what I'm trying to teach you, is that if you would be more like Roy Campanella, then you wouldn't have these problems. If you would just play the game and do that. But at that point, for him to say that to him when he was not really speaking out and was being attacked.
Right. So it's a lot in there. And like he said, there are some people that want to be popular
and some don't.
and some people just want to be respected. And Jackie was like, listen, I have paid my dues to this profession.
Exactly.
I don't owe you all any more thank yous because I've paid my dues.
Yeah, and that's the truth.
I've paid my dues. I was in prayer this past week and the Lord said to me, he said, some people will reach millions though they don't make millions.
Ooh.
And some people will make millions though they don't reach millions.
What you say?
And then he said, now pray for what you want.
Oh my.
What do you want?
My God.
And I'm appreciating reading this because Jackie is not really mincing words. He's like, I'm telling you what's on the other side of this. You all see the glitz, you see the glamour, you see the history making piece of it, but you don't see all the grief they gave me as I was making history and as I was doing what I could to speak out against things that were unfair to provide and open up more access.
Yes.
You only see my name in lights. You don't see the HE double hockey sticks that they're giving me behind the scenes.
Amen.
And so you have to be careful what you ask for. Because yes, I can pray for what I want, but I better be ready for it to come.
Exactly.
Got to be ready for it to come. And so I like the fact that he is naming names.
Yeah.
He's not sugarcoating. He's not saying, oh, this sports agent from da da da. No, he giving you line upon line upon line upon line upon line of names of people.
And when this one took over from Ricky, he really set out to just really abuse him because he said he was his more or less like his favorite. Now he's gone and I'm in this space. So let me show you how I feel about that. And one thing that they go back and said, Jackie Robinson said, all I want to be is respected as a black man.
Yeah.
And in that same reporter, well, you know what? You can't get that. In other words,
well, you can get it if you do things, as Colin Kaepernick said in his series that we're going to talk about. If you do things the right way.
Really?
He was trying to get him to do things the right way because Campanella was seen as more pleasant.
Yeah.
He was the more agreeable person. Even though he wasn't like kissing up to them per se, but like he said to him, he said, when I talk to Campanella, I forget he's a Negro. And Jackie is like, but when he said, but when I talk to you, I can't forget that you are a Negro.
Because I'm telling you truth. Campanella have a way that he can rap truth and be go along to get along type. And Jackie was like, I am gifted. I play this game, and I'm not playing that other game y'all want me to play. I'm playing baseball, and the other thing, this is life here we talking about. It's a difference.
Well, I mean, and again, when you are in that space, you have people that want you to just be you, but just remove any of your cultural markers from yourself. I'll put it that way.
Yes. Yes.
I want to deal with you, but I don't want you to say or do anything that reminds me that you are Black.
Exactly. And how is that when you looking at me in my face? that you want me to, oh, don't talk. I see you, but I don't want to hear what you think as a black man.
Lady Barbara, I'm telling you, there are spaces that I am not in right now because that's exactly how they act.
Uh-huh.
And I don't want to be in those spaces because if, like Jackie said, if I can't talk to you about the things that matter to me, if I can't talk to you about Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner and George Floyd and Sandra Bland and Corin Gaines, if I can't talk to you about what matters to me, then what are we doing?
Exactly.
Like Jackie said, well, we just don't need to have serious conversations because what's serious to me is my blackness.
Yes.
What's serious to me is the degradation of people that look like me that are being treated less than me because they don't have a skill, a gift, or a talent, or a camera in their face. And those people matter to me just as much as what I'm doing with my career.
Yes.
So I could be the kind of black person that never, ever, ever brings up any of the black struggle. That's ultimately what they're saying. If you're in this space, we don't really want you to bring up the black struggle because we want you to play the part of the acceptable, gifted, skilled, talented, magical, unique Negro. And in order to do that, you cannot keep reminding us that you're tied to a people who struggle.
Yeah. Wow.
You can't keep reminding us of the people that you're tied to because our minds just want to deal with you. We don't want to deal with the rest. So the fact that you keep talking about these things is what's making us uncomfortable.
And feeling guilty.
And right, like he said, you are dealing with your own guilt complex. And you don't want me to mention anything about that struggle because it reminds you of the guilt of your ancestors. And even at his time, could have been some of the guilt of them themselves with how they were probably treating black people at the time. But we're going to treat you good because you make us money.
Oh, Lord.
So we're just barely doing good, treating you good. Don't come in here telling us about nobody else.
We're just barely treating you good and your family because she was going through too, her and little Jackie, so barely.
Yeah.
And so, but you just got to be quiet and hold on.
Yeah.
Lord,
and so again, I am yet encouraged to know that some of these same issues that black people are dealing with today, our forebears, they dealt with it.
Yes.
They were having to make the same kinds of decisions that black people are making right now.
Exactly.
Are you going to stand up for your people or are you going to keep quiet, go along to get along, collect your paycheck, live a decent life, collect your paycheck, go along to get along, don't rock the boat, don't get involved in marching, and don't say anything about protesting, and don't join any organizations that are too blackety black, and and then here God says, okay, you started Daring Dialogues, now go make a whole page talking about nothing but black people.
Black people. black, just black people, nothing else.
And the funny part to me is the Daring Dialogues page has under 3,000 followers, and the Black Table Talk page is about to hit 30,000.
Oh, my God.
Because I'm just doing what the Lord told me to do.
Exactly.
He said, don't shy away from your experience.
No.
Don't shy away from your experience. Don't shy away from your identity. Don't shy away from what it's meant for you to be Black in America.
Whew. Jesus.
Don't shy away from what it's meant for you to be Black in another part of the world.
Amen.
Because for some reason we think that white supremacy is only a problem in America, and I can assure you it's not.
It's not. It is not.
It is affecting nations that are even controlled, by Black rulers.
Yeah.
Because if you're not in control of your military, you're not in control many times of your economy. Other people are extracting resources from your country, and your people are suffering. That means you're still affected by white supremacy too.
Exactly.
So though I would love to visit you, don't paint your space like it's perfectly okay. Like there's nothing there that's not disrupting you as a people as well. It may not be it may not be the kind of system of white supremacy that's happening in America, but don't act like nothing is not happening.
Because my friend of 40 plus years is from Costa Rica. And that's one thing she talk about. They go over there and push people out of their spaces, and people living in almost like shacks. And they took over and they just building up the place for themselves. They come from other places too and just push people out.
Yep. Yeah, there's a whole I was reading a couple of years ago. There's a whole entrenchment of neo-Nazis in Costa Rica, of all places. I'm like, we can't even have a tropical island, Lord Jesus, like what are you doing in one of the most beautiful places in the world with this here foolishness? Why?
Everywhere.
Why?
And then you think about these people still raising them.
Yeah.
They still
and my thing is too. And my thing is too, even if it's not an issue of a land grab, even if it's not that, sometimes it's the cultural erasure or the standard of beauty or the notions of beauty that have been dragged. And when I say dragged, I mean dragged all across the continent. So you go to some of the spaces where it may be all Black people, but then y'all are bleaching y'all skin. What are you doing?
My. Yeah.
So again, you still have that influence happening there, that footprint or that fingerprint of that global system saying that white is right or white is better or white is superior is still jacking people up all over the world.
That's true. Oof. I remember when I saw that, I was just so taken aback when they showed that. I was watching some documentary and they were talking about the women, how they was damaging their skin, trying to make it lighter.
Yeah. It's happening in several countries. I know there are some cities in Jamaica where it's happening, but it's like, again, even if you don't have people that's moving into the country and hijacking land, you're hijacking people's minds about what is beautiful.
Oh, yes.
And to me, that's
worse.
That's a dangerous thing.
Too,
because now you have me poisoning myself
putting stuff, oh God,
for an aesthetic that's stripping me of my melanin, and so that's why, again, when people talk about what's happening in the United States, I'm like, ma'am, sir, this is not just our problem.
No.
This is a global problem and it shows up in different ways. So nobody needs to be getting on a high horse about how wonderful their spot is, because I'm going to ask you, how has white supremacy infiltrated and inserted itself in your country? Because it may not be showing up the same way it's showing up in the United States, but I guarantee you there are several ways that it's showing up in your country that you may not just be paying attention to. If you got a whole system where lighter skinned people get jobs and darker skinned people are in all of the low wage paying jobs, that's how white supremacy is showing up in your country.
I had a nurse when I had my total knee replacement in 2013. The nurse who came was from India, and of course she was darker than me, and we had that conversation about how they treat, her complexion and how she was treated in her country. And it's just somehow we got talking about that. And she was sharing how the darker skinned women really suffer.
Yeah. So it's not something that is just relegated to America. America has, unfortunately, several ways. It's built in, it's baked into the country. But that idea, that global idea, is not just here.
It's not.
So before I go hopping on a plane to anybody country, because I saw it in Trinidad, before I go hopping on anybody plane to anybody country telling me to come on over here because it's better, I'm going to need you to tell me how the system of white supremacy is showing up in your country, because I don't want to be caught off guard. Tell me how y'all do stuff over here. I would like to know. I would like to know.
But it's the same thing in Jamaica too, and then being around Jamaicans too. You will hear when they talk about their skin is like butter. They would say, those people were put on a pedestal because of their complexion.
Listen, I have Haitian friends, and all of them have told me that they have been encouraged to marry a white person, that it improves their social standing. Yes. Now, some of them have married fellow Haitians that are just as dark as they are, but I have had friends that went the route of marrying a white person because it was supposed to raise their social capital, and that white person abandoned them and left them with a child to raise. So that, again, that notion and that standard, if you marry them, it'll raise your station. That is a symptom of, or a fruit of, the global system of white supremacy. That's what I mean. Don't tell me that you don't have an issue with white supremacy in your country, because it shows up in different ways. And my thing is, just be honest about the ways that it shows up. Just be honest about the ways that it shows up.
No, but they gonna point the finger this way. They ain't gonna point it back at them.
Yeah, I mean, I had another friend that I met a couple years ago. We became friends, and she was from Trinidad, and she had been over here for like a year when I first met her, and she was telling me, she said, I never really had an issue, or I never felt self-conscious about my skin color until I came to the United States. And I started realizing that people were treating me different because of my skin color. I said, well, yeah, because the United States is baked in that. The caste system in the United States was based on race. It was based on the color of your skin. After they separated the poor whites from the blacks in Bacon's Rebellion, they started creating laws that gave the poor whites social capital. And they basically said, if you're black, you are going to be enslaved. You could be enslaved into perpetuity. So we can actually mark in our country where the color line doctrines started.
Right.
And she was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I was like, "Yeah, because a lot of people don't teach it." And if you're coming from another country, you know, you might not have ever learned that. So I showed it to her, and she read it, and she was like, "Wow, so it really is a thing with actual skin color here." I was like, "Yes."
Yes. Yes.
It really is. And
Yeah.
and people may not always come out and say that that's what it is. They may not come out and say that's why they gave this sister who's lighter skinned the position over this sister who's darker skinned, and they came to the table with the same qualifications.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's what it is.
That's true.
You know, what was the saying? I forget who made it up. You know, if you're black, get back. If you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, you're mellow. And if you're white, you're right. You all right?
Stick around. If you black, get back.
Yeah.
I said, Lord, these things that people come up with. But I remember, because my mother was fair, and I remember being dark like my father. So when I lived with her in New York too, it was, even when she came to school, had to come to school, people were always so surprised. I had a black daddy. My father is a black man. And I always say it this way. I said that black overpowered all of that.
Yeah.
But people are they tend to do that. But we do come, different shades. But, as you grow and you go, I became comfortable with that. And I remember a time I was working at this company, and there was two brothers there. They had moved to New York from California. And I was like 20-something years old, in my mid-20s. And his statement was, when I walked past him, I was a 10. He said I was the right size, but I was the wrong color. So, and they were fair. So it was like, right size, wrong color. And I was thinking of, even then you think, God, we all black though.
Listen.
That's the mindset.
And again, it goes back to, how is white supremacy showing up in your country, in your how is it showing up? Sometimes it's showing up through what they call lightning or brightening, where people believe, in certain countries, hey, let's get with someone who's lighter than you, and let's erase the melanin out of the genetic pool.
Yeah, I heard a black man say that he was encouraged too, to make sure if he didn't marry white, that he married a very fair-skinned woman, and he was dark as me.
Yeah.
But his family told him, when you marry, make sure you find, if it's not white, but make sure she close to that complexion. And you just look and think about, and he said this, and this was his word. He said that was when I was messed up in my head and I didn't know better. Yeah. That's what they told him as a young man.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and just circling back around, Jackie Robinson was not for the foolishness.
Nope, and not at all.
They wanted him to be a certain kind of Negro. And he said, I am who I am. I'm proud of my blackness. Yeah. This is who I am. Mm-hmm. I would like to be liked, but if you don't like me, it's okay, but you're going to respect me.
Yeah, but you can't. We want to groom you and carve you out a way to make it maybe easier for you if you would just not say what you say. And that was the way we want to groom you into a way that we have our idea of how you should be, and not you being the person who you are. So that's the thing they want to take away, your identity, so we can say, oh, you're not like, and people find that to be a compliment that he never got.
You're not like those other Negroes. I wish somebody would tell me that.
I do.
anyway, yeah. So, but what happens when you are that person? Like somebody can give you that suggestion of just being quiet and not saying anything. But what if that suggestion, that being quiet and you'll be okay, what if that is actually the soul killing that happens to you?
Well, I had one supervisor tell me I needed to know my place. I would speak what was on my mind.
Yeah, but I'm saying the advice that some people are giving, like if you just do this, everything will be fine. But what you don't understand is you're literally telling that person to go kill a part of themselves to be what you all want them to be.
Yeah. And when you speak up, you're out of place and you don't know your place because they just want to strip you. So, like you said, that takes something away from you. And I don't think, well, they don't care that for centuries you have done this to our ancestors, constantly trying to strip away. And then we have voices that stand up. You got a problem with that because you don't have the right to speak up for yourself. So, well, let's take this one out. Let's get rid of this one because they are a threat to what, the ones who become a threat, like Dr. King, Malcolm X, and on, those who became a threat, they set out to take them or discredit them. I listened to an interview with Paul Robeson not long ago on YouTube, and all the twisting, and they tried to twist his words up in such a way because of what he stood for.
Yeah. I mean, I give this example all the time, and thank you for saying that, Stephanie. She said they want you to be fine with an experience they've never had.
Oh, that's powerful.
And I try to bring the people's attention. I said, Malcolm was painted to be a violent person,
but he wasn't.
But if you look at his life, he never did anything violent to anybody, though he was painted that way.
Yes.
Right? Martin was painted as, the peaceful, non-violent person, but Martin owned guns too.
He sure did.
And he had a whole bodyguard of people called the Deacons of Defense. People need to go do a little bit more reading.
Yeah.
And at one point, he went to go get another gun. This was MLK. And they denied him the permit to get another gun. But regardless of how either one of them were portrayed, they were both assassinated. As a matter of fact, they were both wearing respectable clothing when they were assassinated.
They were assassinated. Ties, nice shirts, suits, everything.
So, when you talk about how people want to perceive us or how people see us, it doesn't matter. To me, it's like it doesn't matter how respectable you try to come across. People who don't like you are not going to like you.
And then,
regardless.
And that's just true. And what I thought about, you talking about two intelligent Black men. So you are threatened by their intellect. The fact too, on top of that, you Black and you both, Dr. King, Morehouse graduate, went there at a very young age. So, and then you had a man like Malcolm X who educated himself and took time to learn and knew our history. So then you're threatened by that. The intellect of even having men of intelligent Black men, that's a threat to,
but
even supposed to be.
But also young, Black, intelligent, married,
having a family
with children, influencing the world.
Jesus.
You got to go. Because that's not what we want the world to think about you all.
Exactly.
They fear what they don't understand and try to control what they don't.
That's so true.
That was too much on either side. That was too much positivity that was floating around the world. Because remember, they were leaving the United States and they were going to Africa and all these other different places. That was too much of an affront to the propaganda that was going forth about who Black people were in the world.
Yeah.
See, you can't keep telling me that Black people are criminal and, you know, irresponsible and lazy and wild beasts.
No.
When you have MLK and Malcolm on two different spiritual, you know, spectrums, both presenting a consistent picture of Black excellence and Black family. So you are shattering our propaganda window that we want people to keep looking into. And because you are upsetting the propaganda system, the propaganda machine,
have to be removed.
You got to go. Because now you're making our propaganda machine look like a lie. That's why he said media will have you, you know, loving the people you ought to be condemning and going after the people you ought to be loving. If you're not careful, that's what media will have you doing. So final thoughts, Lady Barbara. I know we're a little over time here, but this has been a good conversation. Thank you for chopping it up with me tonight.
I just appreciate it. And just think, I really just appreciate the lesson. But when you look back and just see our lives, it's just like a cycle over and over, you know. And Jackie Robinson, I really thank God for that book. I never had it made. No matter what it looked like to y'all, I didn't have it made. I went through some stuff. So I thank you for the material that you share.
That's what he was actually doing. He's sliding
into base.
Yeah, he was known for stealing. He was known for stealing bases, but I like the way that the image is framed.
Yeah.
I've been sliding home, but it's been a struggle. To slide home. Listen, this has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. I want to thank you, Rob and Stephanie, for showing up on the broadcast tonight, and also those of you who are joining us as well, who have been in and out. Please meet us back here tomorrow night on YouTube, and we'll be on Black Table Talk on our Facebook page. We're going to have an amazing conversation about Colin in Black and White. If you have not seen that video, if you've not seen the series, it's on Netflix. If you have Netflix, please try to watch that series between tonight and tomorrow so that you can join into that conversation. I'm going to be detailing some themes that were in it, and I'm going to try not to give away too much of the story. I'm just going to really be picking out the themes that I saw. And I'm going to talk about the opening scene. I think like maybe in the first 2 to 3 minutes, it was a gut punch for me because I had a brother who went through high school football, college football, got drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, went to the Dallas Cowboys camp and was getting ready to play in the NFL, and he left. And some of the things that he told me about why he left, Colin actually visualizes in this film. And that why it really hit me hard, because it's one thing to have my brother tell me about what happened to him. It's another thing to see it visualized. So this is why I'm encouraging people to watch the film. And we're going to talk about some themes that he shared in there. Things that have to do with, transracial adoptions, a Black child being adopted by a white parent, white parents, and why that can actually be somewhat mentally damaging to them. He actually deals with that in the series of the things that he went through. So I encourage you, try to watch the series so that you can join us in that conversation on tomorrow night. This has been another episode of Daring Dialogues, and I've been your host tonight, Shantae Charles. Remember, light is the most daring opposition to darkness, so continue to be you uniquely you, and go out and be a light. Take care and God bless.
God bless.